A new report shows that business leaders are eager to localize their supply chains where they can. But however, they are skeptical of existing policies and are worried about constraints within electricity, regulations, as well as labor. Now, economist and Intellidex head of capital markets research, that's Peter Montalto, compiled this report, and he joins us now from London to unpack it. Thank you so much for your time, Peter. It seems you're of the view, at least in as far as the report is informing us here, that the right conditions are what will drive business to obviously localize supply chains, at least where possible.
Good morning. Well, the thing that we wanted to delve into in this report, which we wrote for Business Unity South Africa and Business Leadership South Africa, was to put into some context an ongoing discussion between business and government within Nederland on localization. It came up then in the minister's speech yesterday, his budget vote, Mr. Patel's budget vote in Parliament. This idea of substituting 20% of non-oil imports for local content. And basically this comes out as a pretty large number. It's about 200 billion rand a year that would have to be substituted. And what we basically find is that businesses, where they can find a local product that has the right price, the right capacity or quantity of it onshore, and the right quality, they do want to buy local. The problem is the existing supply chains are very weak in many areas. People also, I think, are worried about price often onshore. And as you said, some of those other constraints, such as electricity, etc., really holding things back. So it's really about establishing the right conditions for localization to naturally and sustainably happen, as opposed to necessarily sort of top-down targets.
Yeah, and with that being said, I mean, what are some of the examples, perhaps in other countries, that you can share with us? When we look at rather the downside of moving quite, rigidly, as well as the importance of export competitiveness here, when we look at this report.
So, I mean, all countries try something like this at some point in their sort of life cycles. But we wanted to look at some different examples. And so on the negative side, we had the case of Brazil, which put in place over a decade ago a sort of similar sort of rule to South Africa around designation of individual products, particularly around investment goods, that caused a huge bottleneck in the sort of investment and infrastructure pipeline there, and eventually had to be scrapped. And I think that showed the examples that ultimately you have to prioritize something. Is it good infrastructure rolled out at speed to support your economy? Is a higher goal or a more important goal to do faster than necessarily to localize? And a lot of things like this are interdependent on each other. If you have better infrastructure, you're naturally going to get more localization happening over time. In other examples, in Vietnam, for instance, they have managed to sustainably localize, reduce their dependency on imports, but having a big focus on competitiveness and particularly driving that through exports. And this is the point, to get the right prices onshore, the right quality onshore, opening up to competition and a properly dynamic export strategy is the best way to do that.
Yeah, Peter, I'm keen to know here. I know that the survey was conducted with 125 companies, giving in their input for this final report. What was their general sentiment?
So there was a very interesting split between this positivity on future localization under the right conditions, which is important to stress, versus a lot of skepticism on existing localization policy. Its sort of blanket nature came up a lot. I think frustration from people trying to localize and feeling that they needed more support, more information, more transparency from DTIC, a better understanding of the local market and local capacity from the department came up very strongly. But also these sort of same issues. I think people are looking, and the things we always discuss, around electricity supply, visa issues, productivity, skills, all these sorts of things coming up that are the basis and going to be the basis for expanding industrial capacity onshore. Came up a lot in the sort of free text answers. People are asking for the reform of the economy to enable things like this to happen.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing us what this report had to say. Economist and Intellidex head of capital markets research, Peter Montalto.